We're going to start the meeting for the Texas Inspectors Advisory Committee. It's Monday, July the 28th, 2014, and it's roughly 10:04. And so we'll call the meeting to order. If you'll just, for the purpose of recording, and are we being videotaped this time?
Yes, sir, we are.
Okay. If you'll just kind of go around the table and introduce yourself.
Is that still muted? And is that our microphone?
No, the microphone is here.
Yeah, the microphone
the
for
phone.
recording is in the center.
Okay.
And then this is for the teleconference for
Okay.
those who might actually make it.
You know what? It is muted. Thank you.
Okay. So good for that. So Lee, we'll start with you. Make your way around the table so you can introduce yourself, voice recording who you are.
Lee Warren.
Fred Wilcox.
Barbara Evans.
Kristen Warman.
Michael Malloy.
Mark Moore.
Bill Jones.
Douglas Mixon.
Gwen Jackson.
Carrie Lewis.
Tony Slagle.
Stephen Reinhardt.
Michael Duhart.
Thank you, everybody. And we'd like to recognize that Bill Jones is here from the commission. We appreciate you for being here. You've made the last several meetings, and I know it helps keep the communication lines open between the full commission and us as well. We'll go to agenda item number 2 for approving the minutes for the February meeting and the April meeting. We have them in writing, and you should have received that in your supplement material that is posted on the TREC website. Is there any? If you need time to review, if not, we'll entertain a motion to accept them.
So moved.
Second.
Is there any comments or any recommendations for change or? Okay. Then take a vote to approve them. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed to the minutes? So the minutes have been accepted, and we'll get those posted to the website as quick as possible.
And just to be clear, that was for both February 3rd and April 14th?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then, do we have any general comments, public comments, not related to agenda items? Stan? Not related to current agenda items?
Right.
Okay.
Just to more of information for the committee.
Thank you.
We submitted, we wanted to get on the agenda for the Education Subcommittee meeting for an extension of the deadline for the use of this third option for the field experience. What could be considered for extension, and weren't able to do that. Wondering if you might be willing, the committee might be willing to put that on their agenda for this committee for its next meeting. And there's an item in some of it tells exactly which provision. It's 535.212B3.
Was that from the email that you sent? Sorry.
It's included on the comments document. That's the first document of the email, right? So the very first, where it says agenda items, where it talks about request for adding an agenda item for the next meeting on the expected consideration of deadline extension in that section for the experience line. If possible. The next quarterly rounds of meetings will be the last set of meetings that would allow that to be considered in a normal time frame before that deadline is reached. So
More importantly, it'll be my last meeting.
I think I have a couple.
I'll bring a cake.
And then what was the second one? I apologize.
The second what?
You said you had 2 comments?
No, this is it. This is the only one. It's on that additional comment. Okay, just the one, just to request that it be added to the agenda for the next
Okay.
meeting. Yeah, thank
Thank
you.
you.
I appreciate that.
And then just there are slips over here, so if you plan on commenting on the agenda items that are currently listed as agenda items, if you'll place your name on the public comment list and bring it forward for us, please. We'll give you an opportunity to talk about it. Okay. We have staff reports, so I guess we can just,
Yes,
yes.
Mr. Chairman, Doug Oldmixon, Administrator of the Commission. Of course, we have our regular standards and enforcement services will follow, and education and licensing on the state of how many licenses we have, and any issues. I wanted to preempt just a couple of them. You may have received, and I know many of the commissioners did, a series of communications last week, which I forwarded on to the inspector committee as well, that you may have received from applicants that said they were having problems getting their fingerprints and getting their exams scheduled. We had reached so I just want to give you an update on that. In late July, excuse me, this is late July. Mid-July, we reached a level on our, we ran out of 9-digit numbers for assigning to new entities, and so we began issuing 10-digit numbers, just the next in the sequence. And it turns out that both the fingerprint, MorphoTrust, the company, and our exam provider both had essentially hard-coded the acceptance of those numbers to a 9-digit number. And so we immediately started getting feedback that it wasn't working. And so working with both of those entities, first MorphoTrust determined that actually you could abbreviate the number and it would accept it. If you just entered, left off the leading 1 or 0 and entered 9 digits, that it would accept it. So that was a temporary fix, which we communicated to folks while they went about expanding that field to accept 10-digit numbers. Our exam provider, PSI, had a similar issue, and it took them about 3 or 4 days to get that resolved. It was resolved last either Wednesday or Thursday, and then that was communicated to all of the applicants. So there was a period from the previous Thursday or Friday through the early part of that week where we did have some exam applicants who were, when you're ready to take the exam, you're ready, and you don't want any kind of delays. And so we apologize for the about 5 days to get that resolved, but we finally did get it resolved.
Okay.
Everybody's back on track.
And when's the schedule? Is it August 29th is the scheduled changeover for the 2 different testing providers?
It'll be effective September the 1st.
September the 1st.
So all exams scheduled through the end of August will be taken with PSI. And anyone wants to schedule in September, Pearson VUE will have their system up and running, their switchboard, call center for call-in available about August the 20th or so, 18th, maybe August 18th. And that will be ready to go for September, folks who want to schedule in September. There is one fix that will not yet be in place until the end of October. And that's, they're actually, they are actually having to do some custom programming to accommodate our multiple tries. So when we authorize someone to take an examination, contractually we put the obligation on our exam provider to determine whether this is their first attempt, second attempt, or third attempt, because under the statute, of course, both inspectors and appraisers have that. When we authorize it, we're essentially authorizing 3 attempts to pass. And then at that time, they wouldn't be allowed to schedule again until they have completed the additional 30 hours of education that's required. And then we would essentially authorize or issue a new authorization. Well, their system was built on single authorizations, and so they actually have some custom programming that that is on delivery, the delivery of that programming, because they have to change their whole product, not just us, is like August the 25th, and after it goes through some testing, I think they'll have it all ready by certainly not later than the end of October, just depending on the test results. Thank you.
Thank you. And their system will accommodate our numbers.
The 10-digit numbers.
The 10-digit
yes,
numbers.
We've alerted them to that issue as well, and so that should.
I did start getting phone calls last week.
I'll bet you. All the education providers, of course, are our eyes and ears in the field for that, and of course the principal contact for many of the applicants is with the education provider that they're studying with, and so they look to you guys for to understand everything that's going on and help them fix it, and so that's why I wanted to communicate those issues. Other than that, from the general overall progress report, if you will, things that are on the immediate horizon. The first one, of course, is the budgets. Draft budgets are out and will be considered for final approval at the next commission meeting. Nothing in particular with the inspectors, other than there will be a discussion of whether or not to lower some of the application, renewal fees for inspectors, as well.
They're
as
not very high now, are they?
no,
$25.
no, they're not very high. But then perhaps even to a lower, we can do this within the budget parameters, and so it is on the table. One of the areas that we want to make sure, we have from time to time been asked to ensure that, especially in those license areas where we're not getting very many applicants, and I don't mean geographic areas, I mean license types, to consider lowering those just to reduce the barriers to entry. And so there's some discussion about that, and if the budget committee approves going down that path, then there'd be a contingency in the budget, and all of that will come back to this committee for consideration.
With the fees, Fred, go ahead.
Go,
With the fees that are being charged now, are they starting to cover the inspector's costs of operation within the commission? Because I know that was part of the reason for the fees, and like the education fees and whatnot. So it starts
The education fees
covering
separate. Yes,
covering the
separately.
fees of
Those
operation.
have been analyzed separately. We do believe that the application and renewal fees currently more than cover the incremental percentage of our overhead. Okay, that's responsible, because it's a very small license fee. But it doesn't require, other than big meetings like this and people's time and those kinds of things, which we really don't calculate down to the nth degree and go, oh, let's see, how much for each of these people to be here for 4 hours a day or however long this meeting's going to be. Not those kinds of things. Typically, we look at the overall overhead and then calculate that on percentage based on the number of licenses. And that's satisfactory. In fact, there's even potentially a little room to move.
Or 3,000 versus the 150,000, right? Okay.
3,000 as a percentage of 150,000.
Right.
Exactly.
All right.
That aside, there is still a discrepancy between the allocation of overhead to the education function. That is a little bit short, but that has been addressed and is being addressed in a bigger picture by dealing with the educators as a class. Okay? And so the expenses attributable to that and prior adjustments in those fees are still being worked through. In other words, we're not ready yet to say at this point that we're at 85% and we need a final tweak to get them to where the costs of education overhead is being borne by the education industry. Okay. We're not there yet.
Okay. Thank you.
But we're above. We believe we're in about the 75% was the target previously when we made the last set of adjustments.
Instead of 100%, bearing 100% of it. Okay.
Well, the last set of adjustments got us to about 75%.
Yeah.
Brian. Mr. Olmixon, in the budgeting, in the past, we've had ideas about doing special projects that would have to be funded through fees. Since the agency's now semi-independent, self-directed, is that a possibility in the future?
It would still be borne through fees.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
Well, the answer we got before is we'll be happy for y'all to raise your fees, but it's going to go to the general fund, not to any particular project.
Yeah, that is no longer the case.
Okay.
Obviously. So to the extent, and I'll just give one example. On the appraiser side, one of the federal oversight issues that is still being churned about out there and doesn't have satisfactory definition yet is that we are charged, at least many believe, we're charged with hearing complaints about whether or not appraisers are receiving customary and reasonable fees. Well, that's two different.
Sure.
Customary and reasonable.
Right.
It could be customary and still be unreasonable.
In either direction.
Yeah, there's lots of things. So that the legislature gave tasked the real estate center at Texas A&M to do a study of customary and reasonable fees in Texas, and they did a survey and study and published a report in November of 2012. Well, that report will now it's coming up on 2 years old. And so the possibility and the rules, the federal guidelines seem to require that the data on which you base your fees, if you use a survey, can't be more than 24 months. And so it may be necessary to actually reaccomplish that. Well, there's not and the last time the legislature didn't give the real estate center any money to do that. So one of the things that we may look at on the board side is actually fencing some revenues that come from fees or other sources and actually funding that project. So something like that, if this committee were to identify a particular special project and want to circle fees, you can certainly make that recommendation, and the commission would consider it.
So if we wanted like fees for a train the trainer course, the legal ethics update, that would be appropriate at the budget hearings to bring up?
Yes. The last issue that I wanted to raise.
They've always charged us what it cost them to handle us,
Is the,
their actual
is,
cost.
of course, this is the strategic plan.
They
This
don't
is
profit
the-
off of this.
A year that we publish a strategic plan. That draft will actually be
We could raise
circulated
fees.
this week
We have lots
to
of
the
regulations.
commissioners, and I'll be happy to provide the committee members as well with a copy of that draft, and then invite your comments back on that. One of the things that you will see in there is that there is a continuing need to address the efficacy of the recovery fund.
Yes.
We've had no claims on it for multiple years now, and it makes little sense, frankly. to
Which
do
looks
that.
good for our industry, but why maintain the fund?
With that's right. And so one of the discussions, and this came up the last time in the draft legislation, was to essentially terminate the fund, stop collecting fees for it, have a period in which all final claims could be made, if any, rebate to all of the participants who have current licenses, the $100 that they put into the fund. That would still leave more than enough to pay all the final fees and essentially put the balance of it into the general fund. And then take that piece of overhead off the table.
And maintenance and bookkeeping.
All that,
Yeah.
all that stuff. All that stuff, which would actually reduce the cost of
Maintaining the license.
administration and regulation of this particular license category to the overall commission.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good.
Who's next? Gwen?
We had talked at one time years ago about test passing scores, building a test.
Gwen Jackson, Director of Education and Licensing Services. The first report that you see there is our fiscal year comparison for our applications received, licenses issued, as well as our renewal activity. You will see there that we continue to receive more original applications, if you will, than we did last fiscal year to date in 2013. At the same time, we had received 330, where we've received 475 so far this fiscal year, ending in June. The only other significant differences there is in the renewal activity. You'll see that we've got 577 this fiscal year, as opposed to 1,077 from last year. Primary difference there is, number one, we do have the majority of our licenses that renew during our odd number years. That's one reason. And then the other reason is that last year we started our late renewal process for our inspectors. Previously, their late renewals were considered initial applications.
Okay, so it's really not as bad as it looks.
No.
It's
So you're kind of wondering why.
That's like
It's
50%.
improving.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing in a booming economy when we're all swamped and we're dropping like flies. So, but it's just a difference in the way they're accounted for
Right.
in the system,
The chief
primarily.
The chief difference is that during the odd number years is when when the majority of the licensees became licensed.
And you have to address your points, actually, you have 120 more new applicants this year than you had last year.
Right.
So that's the-
Improving.
Today.
It's improving.
Improving.
It's improving.
It's improving.
140.
in our numbers.
Oh, yes.
Hey, we're finally over 3,000.
And again, here on this report, it's the total number of licensees that we've got. For total inspectors in 2013, it was 2,862, and this June, it was 3,031. So you see the increase is showing there as well.
About 100 more professional.
Let's see, what surprised me to your point is you look at the inactive professional inspectors, and that number stayed pretty darn consistent
Yeah.
throughout the last year. That just makes no sense. You know, with an economy going the way it is.
Yeah, they're hanging on to their license at
Yeah.
least.
Well, they haven't made parole yet.
Was that roughly 24,
You have a handle on
25, somewhere at 2,400 that are
We
active?
have problems.
Right,
Even though we're showing 3,000, it's only about 2,400 that are active.
right.
Okay.
But there are more
And that's a rough
there are more
number.
active there are
Yeah.
more that are active this year than there were last year this time.
All right.
About 100 more.
About
Yeah.
100, yeah.
It's improving.
It's improving. Barbara, you're so
Improving.
positive.
Well, you know, it's improving.
Of all license types, about 140, 140, 150, yeah.
Other markets are underserved by the number of inspectors available.
Kind of every market's underserved
Yeah,
right
I
now.
think
so.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I don't know of anybody
The
that's.
next report that you
Wouldn't work.
see there is the examination activity for June, comparison this year from last year. If you look at the first attempt pass rate, those are individuals that passed the exam on the first try. In 2014, this year it's 55.2, last year was 66.7, so it's a little lower. And then for the professional inspectors, it's higher. First time pass rate is 58.5 versus 53.2 last year.
What happens when you lower the passing score?
And change the test. Yep.
So we're in the standards.
You realize we're blowing the averages for the national exam, don't you?
If there aren't any questions.
We're lowering their overall performance.
And as many of you are aware, some of you participated this in June. We went through the examination data bank, item data bank in preparation for the switch over to Pearson VUE, and updated that. And then about 2 weeks ago, I think there was a group of professional inspectors who actually rated the difficulty of the questions as one additional step in that process for balancing the examinations. And so we'll see how that plays out in future months as we get into those quarters where they're taking the Texas exam, the new one, if you will, from Pearson. We don't expect an enormous difference, but a lot of effort went into to updating those questions, and I wanted to express appreciation for the members of the committee who participated in that, as well as the other volunteer subject matter experts from the industry.
Thank you. Next, I'm sorry, Gwen, anything else? Enforcement?
There's a couple over there.
There's no pictures.
Y'all got?
One more.
$20.
Which you made in 2 days.
In 2 days. Yeah. So it'll just go right back to work.
Yeah.
Mike Malloy, Standards Enforcement Services. This is the disciplinary report. The first page is all the disciplinary action that's been held, or taken since the last meeting. And then the following 2 pages is everything that's been taken for fiscal year 2014 up until last week, basically. We were quite busy this period. You can see from the front page. Just to let you know, currently we have 17 open cases, and the oldest case open was filed in October 2013. That one's pending a SOA hearing.
Just a second. I'm sorry, I couldn't hear that last part.
The oldest case, the date on it is October 20th of
Okay.
2013. It's pending a SOA hearing, so that can, if it does go through a hearing, it's going to be another, could be 6 months before the commission finally hears it. So.
Okay. Do we have any additional copies there?
It's up on the screen.
Yeah.
Look on the screen.
It's up on the screen.
It's up on the screen.
It's up on the screen.
You can just click down to the next page.
Mike.
Thanks. Appreciate this page.
Right, with some more recent actions.
Follow the yellow trail. Follow the yellow trail.
Who's never really inspected the wrong house?
I have.
This individual had done
I believe
it
that.
once.
I have.
So it's warranted,
They give you the wrong address.
and there was some damage involved with his inspection of that.
Of course there was.
He's inspected the wrong house more than once?
That's what he admitted on his statement. I've done this more than once.
Wow.
I kind of warranted.
You only did it once, so.
Well, it's odd how often you get the numbers inverted. Either you did it or they did it. And now when I go out, if I don't see for sale sign, lockbox, something, I don't touch nothing until I call and verify. But I've only done inspections on once, and it was many years ago. It's enough to learn when you waste a lot of effort, you don't want to do it again. But it happens, 2 or 3 times a year that you end up at the wrong house. So
On that one where he did it with an expired license, did he express any intent to actually reactivate his license or anything as such? Because that basically gets a $3,000 penalty, considering how many that guy was doing in a day. He's basically going to pay for that in about 2 days.
well, if he's charging more than $75.
He was charging $300 and was doing 6 or 7 a day.
So he was a good quality inspector.
Yeah.
High quality.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
This can't.
So that's
He
kind
did
of,
express intent he would reactivate his license, and if that was the case, then he'd probably be put on a discipline or a probated license of some kind.
That'll cut him down to 5 a day.
yeah. Okay.
Just can't picture.
Amazing.
Picture all day to do 1, how do you do 5?
I don't know either. I'm always amazed.
Yes.
We have a subcommittee meeting, I'll ask it then. It's just general.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
You can
I'm
ask
sorry.
me.
Nah. Nothing big deal. I sure made it.
Y'all have any questions for Michael?
No.
Thank you. Do you need anything from this committee to help you?
No.
Close any of the other cases? You only have 17 left open.
Brad's going to possibly testify at this over hearing, so
Okay.
as an expert.
All right.
So, so they need to talk.
For the Texas Real Estate Commission? Or?
Yes.
Okay.
When is that hearing?
I was going to say, who designated the expert?
No, when is it?
The hearing? Well, it's tentatively August 12th. I can tell you that
It won't happen.
sometimes people ask for extensions or, who may settle. There's a lot of variables that are involved. But tentatively, it's set at 9 a.m. on August 12th.
Brett's answered their question. Well, definitely,
Thank you.
maybe. It could be.
Can I ask him a question?
It's okay if Derek asks you questions.
Okay with me?
It says on here that reported that a trash compactor was not present when the home did have a trash compactor, and that's not a required. Doesn't that fall under optional in the appliances? So
Well, it could consider being negligent writing of the report. So the person was upset. They thought they had one and didn't. It was noted it wasn't there. So.
I would have been
11,
devastated.
2003.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
a
the
real
new
deal
standards.
breaker.
That was
and
before the new
new-
standards went in,
Yeah.
right? Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's.
When we take
that's
this
an old-
discipline, it may not reflect what the standards of practice was at the
I
time.
got you. Yeah, that's right here. So it was on.
Yeah. Thank you. Sir,
I once missed a trash compactor. I was back in the house for a young lady, and she was standing in front of it, so I wasn't really studying what behind her.
do we have another
I
report?
ended up marrying her.
Not from staff.
Yeah, not from staff, but thank you.
It's true. It's my wife's time.
Oh, shit.
Does the committee have anything from the staff members that are here related to agenda item number 4?
I'm
If
good.
not, we'll go to Lee. You had a subcommittee meeting almost happen today?
Almost happened, yeah. No, we ended up canceling that meeting.
Quorum.
Yeah, I didn't know I was on it.
Oh.
Did you have any other meetings between the last, our full committee and this one?
Nope.
The chairman didn't keep in
Nothing.
touch
I need
with
to
me.
send you a memo.
Yeah, somebody does.
We're getting short
I went road.
Okay.
You're just
Retired on active
Let's
duty.
get back
really
to
out of
getting a short
control.
timer syndrome.
I am.
Brad is not here for
He's not.
the enforcement. He is vacationing, so he was not able to make it for this one. And Greg is also vacationing. We have one in the mountains and one in the ocean. So, so Michael, do you have anything for enforcement?
No, sir.
Okay, so
There was no.
That's a concerning grin.
He didn't know he was on it either.
Oh, okay. We got our subcommittees down
Yeah,
now.
exactly.
The
Well, I
enforcement
haven't heard from
committee
anybody.
did not meet between this meeting and the previous meeting.
right.
Are you
Okay.
on that too?
No.
Stephen,
Not that I
do you
know
have
of.
anything from the education subcommittee?
Just I guess a summary.
Just a summary
We did
report.
have
I didn't make
a
that one
subcommittee meeting.
Not covering agenda items,
No.
just a summary report.
The subcommittee meeting revolved around the recommendations out of ESAC. We talked about some of the changes proposed to the 213, 14, and 18, cleaning them up a little bit. I thought it went very well in gathering the information to bring to the full committee.
Okay, sounds good. That's all their subcommittee reports. So we'll move on to agenda item number 6, discussion and possible action concerning changes to qualifying education rules proposed as a result of the agency's quadrennial rule review process.
Say it 3 times
I was
fast.
waiting to see you pronounce that.
3 times fast.
Yeah, quadrennial. You can say quadruplex. Quadrennial.
Can I get some water?
Okay.
Yeah.
Here a cup.
Brad's comments.
We won't do this
Are
over
you
your
going to
computer.
run with this one, or?
I think
Thank
both,
you.
I will start off with this one. The changes to the qualifying education rules were considered by the Education Subcommittee, and the Education Subcommittee, and Mr. Reinhardt or Dr. Evans can correct me if I get this incorrect. The committee wanted some more information from education providers as to how inspectors were using correspondence courses.
Is this the email that went out to the providers?
Yes, so we
On-
asked our Education and Licensing Department to send out a survey, and Ms. Jackson did send out a survey last week, and maybe she can tell us.
Yes, the survey went out on Wednesday.
And you asked for results by Friday.
Yeah.
Yes.
However, we received, I think, a fairly good amount of information back from those who did
Who were
respond. We sent out 50 requests, and we heard back from 10. which I think in that short period of time.
Not bad at all.
From the 10 that we heard from, there were 3 who offer inspector courses via correspondence. Yearly enrollment for one was 10 to 12 individuals. Yearly enrollment for another was 3,015.
Oh, wow.
And yearly enrollment for another was between 200 and 300. And of course, those were all affiliated with or from accredited colleges and universities. Okay. Of those, the company that has 10 to 12, they're 100% correspondence. The one that has 200 to 300 is 100% correspondence as well. I didn't know if it would be appropriate for me to name the names of the schools.
Well, and I'd like to ask, because before the survey was sent out, I asked you to include a definition of correspondence.
Yes.
So what was the definition of correspondence that
Yeah, I'm interested in
Yeah.
that.
in the survey?
That was my concern.
Because there's a terminology
The semantic
concern
vagueness, yeah,
here.
yeah.
The definition that was sent out was a course where the delivery method is PDF version of a text or the text itself, where there is no interaction between a student and an instructor. It can be done online, but again, no interaction. They're reading, primarily reading, but where they may have lessons that they complete, and they have to take a passing exam.
All of them have a qualifying examination.
Yes.
Is the exam proctored under that definition, or did you ask that question?
I didn't ask that question, although the way our rules are stated, it could be, the exam can be proctored or it can be online, online, on computer. From those that I heard from, they all, with the exception of one, appeared to understand that definition and respond appropriately. There was one that responded, however, that I know that the courses that they have are not correspondence, but they're online. Okay.
They're interactive or?
Right, they're interactive. So that one is, I knew who they were. And
They
so-
weren't clear on the definition
Right, they
as it
weren't.
related to them.
Right, they were unclear on the definition. And then I also looked up the pass rates for those schools that did respond affirmatively that they do have correspondence.
Share that with us.
One of the pass rates was 42%. The other one was 64%. And then another one was 35, almost 36%.
So we'll give them the benefit of the doubt. So 2 are under the average, 1's well over.
Right.
That's right.
Yes. And then there were, of course, there were 7 providers who said that, they only offer online courses.
Just
Online,
didn't share numbers, they just said online
Right.
courses?
but it could be,
Not correspondence.
Oh, okay.
Not
but they're interactive.
Yes. Well, if they're online, they have to go through IDEC. Yes,
So they are IDEC approved.
IDEC
So
approved.
how many?
7.
So there are only 3 that are true correspondence.
Right, that we heard from.
So, okay, that we heard
responded
from.
to the survey.
So 10 groups responded.
Right.
The one that had like 3,000.
3,000.
Is that
Is that-
inspector related or all their courses?
They indicated inspector related because we asked.
Is that a university connection?
Okay.
Were they the high pass rate?
They were the high pass rate. They
But
may
if we're only
also
getting,
be offering renewal.
It's not one class.
You know what I'm saying? It
That's-
may not be
8,
just
6
qualifying
classes.
education or pre-licensure. It
Yeah,
may
but
be
it's still-
related
The
as well.
3,000 classes
That's significant.
spread on students.
Gwen, thank you. I know we threw that to you.
I'm surprised I heard from as many as I did.
Well, I
20% return, that's,
Yeah.
in July to get a university to respond's a miracle.
So,
Brian.
if I may, Mr. Chair,
yes.
one of the issues, and this is Carrie Lewis, General Counsel, one of the issues with the whole correspondence course debate is definitional.
Right.
Because there's been a mixture, the original correspondence course was you were mailed a book and you read it, and then when you were ready to take your test, you went down to some proctored site and you took your exam. Over the years, that book has been offered as a PDF online. You get it over the internet, you can read through it, the exam's online, and so that's where some of the, let me stop there. So let me just go, that's traditional correspondence that has evolved into an online correspondence. Some people call that an online course and not a correspondence course. So you already got two definitions for basically the same thing that's just delivered two different ways. Then you have online courses like Gwen was talking about, which are interactive. We call them alternative delivery, and they are IDEC approved, which means that they go through a quality assurance, basically, that their timing, the exam, they have units, it's delivery and design. Delivery and design of the course are examined.
Monitored.
Right.
Yeah,
so-
along the way, okay.
And the exam, usually the questions are required to be different than the questions given at the end of a unit. So you're not just repeating questions at the end. So there's a sort of a standard set.
And you don't get the exam at the beginning to where you can just read the material and answer the exam, like an open book test.
So those are the two things to remember when you're looking at these rules, and I know you went over that definition for your subcommittee, but I really think it's important to understand because people in the industry confuse those terms. People
To their benefit.
to their benefit or not to their benefit, I won't go that far, but it can be confusing, but there is a difference. And when ESAC went through these rules, they were concerned, and what they proposed, which I'll let you go into, Steve, from what the inspector side, but they were concerned about the abuses that happen with the traditional correspondence course, no matter how it's delivered, whether it's in paper or whether it's delivered online. And basically, there's no standard set for the amount of time it takes to review that course. A lot of these courses come with the exam first, where you just go look up the answers. And on the computer, you can do a search. Just search the word. Boom. Okay. So you're passing the exam, but are you learning the material? And with consumer protection being the main goal, making sure you have well-educated people. The reason we require education is so that the consumer is protected when that person gets out in the field, whether it's real estate or real estate inspectors. So they had, over the years, this has been a continuing problem that's been brought to the attention of not just the Real Estate Education Standards Committee, but this committee as well. I remember when I sat on the committee with Commissioner Jones interviewing candidates for this body, and to a person, every single one said education was the major concern in the industry, in the inspector industry. So again, it's also a concern for the real estate professionals as well. So just wanted to give you that background.
Okay. Thank you.
Stands for comment. If you go to second.
Yeah. Just a second. On the one school that's offering 3,000, do you believe that's a combination of core classes and continuing education classes?
Yes.
Because if we only have 500 applicants,
Bless you.
Yeah.
and I understand there's 6 books per applicant, so you have multiple books that may go in with, continuing education as well, probably being offered. 3,000 to sound reasonable. The school, the size of the school and everything.
I think it's high. I think it definitely includes continuing education.
Okay.
But until I send something back and say,
Yeah, just I want to make sure our numbers are good.
also including real
don't want to
estate
skew
on
them.
this, even though the questionnaire clearly said inspector
Okay.
course.
Brian, we're not being flooded with applications that tend to indicate it's a combination.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
Or they do multi-state or something.
the numbers don't tell.
Yeah.
All right.
And asking a question, the alternate delivery, method. The examinations on those are proctored.
No.
They're not proctored.
Not necessarily. They're not required.
But can they be?
Can
Do some people proctor them? Do we know?
Some do.
Some do. So it's not an outrageous imposition if we were to say, if you're going to do examinations online, they must be proctored.
I think, of course, over the years, they've moved more towards the exam being online
Right.
and not proctored. But we do have some providers who do have the exam proctored. You have to go either into one of their offices, or you can get a librarian or a clergy person, or, they've got a method by which you submit the name and who that individual may be, and the school is in contact with that person.
Does anyone have a setup, basically when you go take a licensing examination, you go to a location, PSI right now, and you sign in with a person, but you're really proctored online too, because they know how long it took you to take your examination. Is that a means of proctoring? Is that a valid means of proctoring? That you have to sign in and your time is recorded in the length of time it takes you to take your examination?
Well, the secret questions and...
You have to submit, you bring your ID, you have to identify yourself.
Oh, and so the other issue would be, is it really you? You can't just sign in on a computer with no one actually seeing your face and knowing that it is you.
But they ask you key questions.
Yes, security questions.
But yes, I
Yeah, but I
know
can
your
give that
questions.
answer to
I know.
you. Well, why would I give it to you? I'd want to pass.
Well, it's true.
Yes, okay.
So typically, we're not measuring the time that it takes you to
Seeing that
take
it's
the
you.
exam.
Yeah, I know.
It's the time it takes you to study the material.
Right. Well, but what I'm thinking is, in taking the examination, what I was looking at is a means of proctoring to where they don't have to go to a remote location. They could do it by computer.
They do.
Okay, they can?
That is part of the IDEC review on the design and delivery, if it's 100% online. Is there a valid ID?
Well, you could Skype, too.
The technology has opened up all new
Right.
possibilities.
Right.
Those are considered when they do when IDEC reviews. IDEC does not have it's not, you must do A, B, and C, and everybody has to do it. They say you must achieve these
goals,
kinds of-
right.
You must have a reasonable method for
Right.
identifying the individual. How do you do that?
I'm just asking
Some
if
do
it's possible.
Secret questions, security questions, proctoring, lots of different possibilities.
Of course, we also know if people are going to lie and cheat, they're going to lie and cheat, and they'll find a way to do it.
They'll find a way to do it. We just got to find a way to kind of narrow that gap a little bit.
Well, the issue for me is always, I understand all the issues with correspondence, and I have problems with them, but I also know, as a realistic thing, the last time we raised hours for continuing education, we dropped enrollment in inspector courses by 50%. And the potential income for an inspector doesn't justify $20,000 to $25,000 in education costs to produce a license. And if you're going to teach 400 classroom hours, that's what you're going to do. The other thing that we have now is the 40 hours of hands-on actual experience, which can in some way make up for the deficiencies of the correspondence courses. And I just want everybody to keep that in mind, that if you throw out correspondence, you're probably going to shut down the education
You're
of
pretty much
inspectors.
gonna shut it down.
Yeah.
Well, and correspondence in the traditional sense, or correspondence just being delivered online. I mean, because when you say eliminate correspondence entirely, are you saying just eliminate every kind of correspondence course? Online, everything?
I am totally torn. I'm against traditional correspondence, but if you went to an alternate delivery, how many people would that shut down? How much would it raise cost? And sitting here, I don't know those answers. And so if requiring everyone to go to an alternate delivery, if that would double the cost of obtaining an inspector's license, you'll probably shut down the education process or severely restrict it. If it's a 10 to 12% cost increase, then I probably wouldn't have any problem with it. But we don't know that. And so not having those numbers and not having anyone testify to them and not knowing anyone who can provide them to me offhand, I'm real hesitant to throw out anything right now. At the same time, obviously, we have education problems, and we still have them. We changed examinations and we lowered the passing score, and we're still low men on the totem pole on passing rate for the national exam, which is not impressive.
Right. You know, we did a survey or looked at IDEC and what the costs are for IDEC, which are the online alternative delivery method.
For inspectors or realtors? I won't.
Well, it's the same.
Okay. All right.
Process is the same.
Okay.
Cost is the same.
Okay.
And in terms of the fees, it's $825 for the first course and $625 for the second course and subsequent courses after that.
A course is what?
A course is a course.
Foundations, framing, roofs.
Provider
And how many, Brian, you said 6 earlier?
Yeah, about six separate courses is what it would take for our particular school. We have 6 books to go to 1 inspector.
So you're indicating like between 4,000 and 5,000.
Yeah.
And then you have the TREC licensees that just, I submitted a book for approval and it was $1,400.
To get approval
From
TREC.
Plus the several $1,000s that it would take to go through.
If you're talking one course.
So, but there's also a difference, the difference between realtors and inspectors. Whatever it costs you to develop for realtors, your field of candidates is considerably higher.
Oh, absolutely.
So the cost of the student goes up tremendously for inspectors.
Trent, I want to ask you a question. You used the term shut down a couple times. You're talking about shut down the classroom providers?
Yes.
Okay. I just
You will shut down the whole education program. People can't afford to come into it. You know, right now, I think cost, you want to speak to cost around $3,000?
It's pretty much on average for all the schools, they're charging $3,000 per applicant.
And
to get all the courses, roughly what you've got,
Yeah.
Stan, roughly what you
Including
have.
work and coming
So
in a
it's-
hotel and staying at a school.
Oh, no, that's
That's
just
not
the
your,
book.
That's just the
yeah,
books.
that's just the base.
Yeah.
One more definition, let me clarify one more thing. The definition that ESAC has adopted for classroom includes webinars.
Yeah, I noticed that.
So
and-
that's another option. Somebody could, if you have a camera and you can see your student, they can see you.
300 hours of webinars.
But
I'm just saying that is an option.
But it's a huge expense to set up, and then you've got to make your money back over some reasonable period of time to be in business. But most of our students, you're going into a field of inspections where my understanding of the average gross income of an inspector, and I have no base for this other than what I hear, is about $75,000.
That's fair.
That's not the potential of a realtor, as you know. And so it's a different income bracket that you're looking at, and most of the people that come in the schools that I teach are really struggling to hang on and to be able to afford this.
Scraping up the money to make the down payment
You're
on
right.
the financial plan to be able to get into the business.
So if we do anything to appreciably raise that cost, we have to look at it very carefully, because we'll cut out the number of people who can even qualify to start taking the courses.
And
Well,
for history purposes, we used to be where you had to go through an apprentice program. And because of people not being able to find sponsors, there were these other alternative methods to be able to get into the industry without a sponsor if you did X amount more education. So that was developed so you could get these other means of education to be able to bypass sponsorship. And what I foresee happening is we're going to actually regress back into people are going to, because they can't afford the books, or the schools will just say, well, I'm not even going to mess with it, and just start shutting them down. People will have to regress back to the sponsorship program, which got us into this whole mess in the first place.
Well, apprenticeship wasn't
For
the
the
altruistic
number of inspectors.
part was that we would freely train people, but in point of fact, most people who trained apprentices, even back in the 90s, it was pay me $30,000 up front, and then you're going to be an indentured servant for 5 years, non-compete agreement forever. So they couldn't afford 30 grand, and then they're tied to that sponsor for 5 years, which also led to the problem. And then very few people wanted to train. Understanding, if I'm going to take somebody out with me, even on a ride-along and show them along, it doubles my time to go through an inspection. And I don't do 6 a day, I do 1, maybe 2 if they're really small. So it wipes me out to do that. It's very nice of me, but it costs me a fortune. So to train somebody is hugely expensive. So the schools can provide for multiple people, but it's a limited income thing. And one of the things I was asking about raising fees, years ago we proposed, one of our problems with a lot of students is ability to read. And what we talked about was building a test house, that they can actually do inspections fairly well, but they're not real literate, and building a test house with interchangeable parts to see how they do in actually performing the test. And we went to the legislator and they said, well, you can raise your fees, we'll take the money, but you can't do that. So, I mean, we've looked at this for years on multiple ways to qualify people. When we raised hours from it, I think it was 330 or 320 to 400, we dropped enrollment and inspection courses by 50%.
Really?
Yes.
Now, do you think that drop, just devil's advocate here, if I wanted to enter a profession,
Hopefully you wouldn't want to be an inspector.
no.
Okay.
But if you want to call this a profession like real
Yeah,
estate or
yes.
anything else, it would seem to me that the cost went up 20%, oh my gosh, I'm going to do something else. How committed was I to that career goal?
And that's an excellent argument, but
Well, let me finish my
go ahead.
And this whole thing, correspondence, online courses, we face it every day. We do alternative delivery now where it's like a webcam in the room. You can see the instructor, you can ask questions back and forth. Because some of these classes might cost $200 or $300 a day. I can't fill a classroom at 20, but they can in Amarillo and Austin and these other places, and so it's very cost effective that way. But still, looking at the pass-fail rate in the state exam, and you mentioned it being below the national average and everything, anything that would lower standards is, you might get a higher number of people passing, but that enforcement report we just got is going to be 5 or 6 pages longer.
Oh, without
as
question.
a result as well.
But if I could change your
discussing
point of
right
view.
now, it doesn't lower any standards.
No,
It kind of
I'm
keeps it.
I'm just throwing
Well-
a thought process at her because I like the proctored exam. You know, if you take a class online or whatever, if you go to one of these testing centers or whatever.
Yeah.
But then they're going
I
to charge
that.
you a fee
Well,
for
I
the exam as
understand.
well.
But that's more of a nominal fee. Let me give you some help. One of the guys, I just taught a class last weekend, and one of the guys in that's probably the best student in class, just moved down from New York, he's a framer. Okay? He's in his early 40s, and the guy, if he makes it through, will be a really good inspector. Got a great eye for detail. The next best guy is a flooring installer. Okay? Now, I have a number of people in the class who are coming from IT where they've been laid off. And they're good at reading, but they have no background in inspections or in any of the construction trade. So as far as taking the test and reading the material, they're fine, but they don't know what anything is. Okay? So we have the two. You have, not meaning anything in a demeaning sense, but you have some who are less well formally educated, but are really good at the trades, trying to go through and read material. And then you have some who have higher formal education, but have no background or experience. And they're still coming from areas where, you know, the $75,000 may be doubling the money they've been making. So it's of interest to them. And most of them, not every student you have in a class is totally committed by any stretch, which astounds me that you'd pay for it and take your time. You know, I had to go to grade school. I don't have to do this. You think you would really be interested. But we have some people that come through, some of them never get licensed because of the ability to read, but that would make very good inspectors. So it's not just the way it's being done. Well, I think I've kind of enlightened a little bit, but we're not getting everybody we could get who really would make good inspectors and wouldn't necessarily end up on that complaint list.
And I appreciate the enlightenment. Strangely enough, I do grasp the concept.
I understand, but you're one of a group in here too, so.
So, well, I look at this whole education thing, and even from the real estate, you know, by the way, 50% of realtors are at or below the poverty level. Just-
Yeah, yeah.
You don't get a real estate license and go buy a Lexus.
Well, it's like
It's
everything.
strange.
You got to work
You lease
hard.
a Lexus.
You got to work. You got to work hard at
That's another
anything.
thing.
6 months
Yeah.
to come and pick
They
it
get
up.
real bored real quick.
But
Yeah.
as far as education goes, it's what you're looking at here is not unique to inspectors.
Right.
It's not unique to realtors. This is across the board. And I think you may have the exceptions that he can't meet the standards, but he might do the job well. I know a young lady who's smart as a whip, wanted to be a teacher, threw up every time she had to take the teacher's exam. She was
Oh, yeah.
and she failed it 7 or 8 times before she finally passed.
Yeah.
But she did pass.
Right.
So maybe the guy that can't read needs some remedial help in learning how to read the material or something like that. But I think when you look at standards, especially in education,
He can't read, he's going to have to write a report.
you don't want to lower it. And I'm hardcore, old school about some things, but you've got to have skin in the game. And there is such thing as cost of doing business.
Oh, I agree. I understand that.
So
For me, with correspondence, I've never been a big fan of the correspondence where they give you the book, they give you a packet which has pretty much every question that's going to be on that test. And what does everybody do? They look at the test first, and they go and they find the answers, they jot them down, they memorize those, they go in, they take their little proctored exam.
You want to back
but how
up
about the
passing
one that
rate?
gives you the certificate of completion when they send you the book? You just write your name in when you send your test in. You've
Right.
already got the certificate
Yeah.
of completion.
Well, all those things do need to be addressed, and I'm all for that.
Right, but this is a passing rate for the final exam,
Yeah.
not for correspondence. So, I look at it, there are so many, with technology the way it is right now, there are so many ways to have those online courses to where you're not going to eliminate all of them, but you can reduce the amount of people, just flying through it to force them to take the time. We were talking about defensive driving earlier and how they force you to, have to spend a certain amount of time, answer security questions. There was one where part of what you filled out for them, any number of things, and they'll ask you what's the middle 2 numbers of your social security number, or just weird off chance questions.
Those are still correspondence courses.
Right, but you have to do it. But if I was considered those more interactive.
Those
But what I don't,
wouldn't be correspondence courses.
There's
That would be interactive.
those are
There's
interactive,
no
right?
interaction with anybody. You're just taking the
sure you take
questions
the
one at a
steps.
time.
They're alternative delivery.
Alternative delivery.
Courses.
Right.
Where's the interaction
Under that
that makes it
definition.
alternative delivery?
As I understand it, it doesn't have to be interaction. It can be an online course to be an alternative delivery. Classroom is what requires the live interaction under the definition.
I guess I'm getting more
There-
confused now too.
Online courses, true online course that, for example, IDEC can take a look at, they have interaction where the student has, they've got exercises and questions and interactivity with the course itself as they're going through it, whether it's, some of them have, for example, it'll talk to them about certain statutes or rules, et cetera, and then they'll need to go to another website, if you would, to locate that information
interaction.
and go back and then put in their answers. or
But like he was
questions.
talking about where it's basically an online correspondence course, that's still a correspondence
No,
course.
well, that would be an alternative delivery, and Tony has put the definitions on the screen. Classroom delivery.
And these are proposed.
These are, yes, these are proposed
And this is
definitions.
to clarify all the different terms that
Yeah.
have been used.
Classroom delivery is a method of course delivery where the instructor and students interact face-to-face and in real time in either the same physical location or through the use of technology. So this would be
Webinars
like
also, those types of
in the
things.
class, seats, people in chairs, or interactive webinars, go-to-meeting. You could utilize technology to hold what is considered a classroom course under these proposed definitions. But alternative delivery is defined as a method of course delivery other than classroom delivery where the course has been certified by a distance learning certification center acceptable to the commission.
So in your example of
That's
a
an
driver's ed course,
That's an alternative delivery, isn't it?
because
Correct.
somebody
Right.
has gone through and made sure that the timing is monitored.
It's a non-
So right now, Trek has approved IDEC as a certified, distance learning certification center. And what they require, and I'll just, they require that the course objectives have sound learning approaches, they're mastery-based learning, appropriate instructional strategies. The course designer has to have appropriate credentials. The course provider's procedures for properly reviewing course materials on a periodic basis, so they need to review those.
Who's on the phone?
Excuse me. Who's on the phone?
Hello?
Hello?
Wow.
Yeah, I'm just at the. No, it doesn't show. Whoever is on the phone, if that's Mr. Buck, could you please mute your phone? We can hear what's going on in the background.
Or we're going to mute you.
So that same
Thank you.
scenario, if they got rid of the timing, does that turn it into a correspondence course?
Well, I'm just saying, what they do is they've got, in that same scenario, it may or may not, because the time clock, what he was describing in a defensive driving course, they're very strict. It's like, you've got to sit through every minute of the 8 hours, period. What IDEC does is they verify the number of credit hours, and they look at and correct me if I'm wrong, the average, the time it takes an average person to do it. So the courses that are IDEC approved aren't necessarily timed exactly like that, but they look at the average time a person would take to go through it. So somebody might be able to go through this material in a 3-hour course, say in 4 hours. Somebody might be able to do it in 2 hours. They're a fast reader. But they look at the average time for somebody to read and comprehend and go through the units. So that's.
But there's still no, so I guess we have two definitions there, the classroom and the alternative delivery.
Right.
Is correspondence as a definition gone from there?
Correspondence as the definition is gone. You could have probably a traditional correspondence course known today. There's not currently, IDEC doesn't certify correspondence courses right now because of the inherent problems of correspondence courses. Even an online version of a correspondence course where you're just sending them a PDF of a book, IDEC would not certify that. Okay? An online course that IDEC would certify has to have these factors that I was reading you, have those appropriate design and delivery methods to be able to get certification. We don't have anybody on staff at Trek that has that capability, the qualifications to make that independent judgment, which is why we have someone like IDEC make that
But
certification.
why aren't we putting time constraints on, or why isn't IDEC putting time constraints on there like they do defensive driving? I mean, that's the whole point of us saying you have to have X amount of hours
She
for this.
doesn't work for IDEC, so she can.
Yeah.
Well, I know,
No,
but we
during
can.
the average time, yeah.
Well, I can answer that. Because defensive driving is punitive.
Right.
Okay, it's not educational, it's punitive.
Right.
Okay, it has equal objectives, both. This is education. Okay, and so, in the final analysis, we want to know that they learn the material. But if you're, an exceptionally bright guy, I've got a background in whatever engineering, so forth, so I've been doing building for years, and I can get through this stuff, and I know it, so I get through it faster than someone else. Okay, should we build that penalty feature into courses? The instructional design community says absolutely not.
Okay.
So they use this average, and there's two ways that they evaluate it. One is not used. Okay, it's available, but it's not used, and that is you take 10 people and 10 students, and you sit them in a room, and they all take it, however long it takes, and then you do the average, just numerical average. Nobody does it. There are curriculum design specialists. These are people that is their job. And there are standards for how many pages and average words, you can read and all those kinds of, and they're giant manuals of all this stuff that's part of that that curriculum design field, if you will. It's a professional field. And so you have the method that is used by IDAC and by almost everyone who submits a course to IDAC is that they get two of these qualified individuals to review the course and say, this is 30 hours worth of material under the design criteria that, or under the evaluated criteria that we use for instructional design. And so that's what everybody does. One thing that I did want to throw out, and just to make absolutely certain, and I apologize, I missed a little bit because there's another point I wanted to bring up. I had to go print something out for. That correspondence for a number of years, at least as long as I've been here, so at least the last 5 years, and I don't know exactly when we put it into the rule, but the only, I believe it was 2 years before that, because it was still under some evaluation when I came in 2009. And that was correspondence, traditional correspondence is only offered, can only be offered by a accredited college or university or a provider working in tandem with, okay, in association with.
And that's still in here.
That is. It's in the rules, okay? And here's what we have determined is the essential problem there is that the original assumption that was built into that is twofold. One is that every college or university, we don't have jurisdiction over them. We don't want jurisdiction over them. Okay? They have enough regulatory oversight already. Okay? So to the extent that a course is offered consistent with their regulatory oversight, which a lot of times is just peer review from other colleges and universities. There's a certifying body that comes and does periodic visitations and samples courses, looks at instructional design, all that, and then certifies the college. That's good for academic certification. These are not academic type courses. There is a similar process for technical type education, or in this case, kind of certificate programs that we actually need to do some more research on. But what we've actually determined is, for the most part, it appears, this is in essence the beginning of this in-depth research that still has to be done, but it appears that the majority of these in-association courses, which are the ones that are causing the most headaches or have the greatest concern, if you will, is that they're being offered through an unreviewed program. In other words, the adult education, which is it's not a certificate program and it's not an academic program. And so it's just those extension courses, if you will. You know, you want to take travel or bowling or whatever. You can take a lot of those kinds of courses through your community college, but they're offered in the adult education program, which doesn't have standards. And that's our principal.
So that's the key issue.
Concern is so it appeared that the assumption was that it would undergo some kind of review. And in fact, our rules provide that the college, essentially, by signing the certificate, is certifying that it meets some standard.
The curriculum accreditation standards is what the rule says.
Correct.
So it doesn't make a distinction.
So the question there is, all right, how do we enforce that? Well, the only way that we can enforce it is by enforcing it on the partners, the providers, because we don't have jurisdiction over the colleges.
Right.
So what we want to ensure that is happening is that there's some kind of review, that it's meeting a valid instructional design criteria of some kind, not adult education, where there's no evaluation of those programs. They're just moneymakers. And so that's all we want to assure, and I don't know that we're, frankly, to be perfectly honest, I don't know that we're ready today to say that we understand that 100%. It is still being worked on. And there's a lot that we don't, because we're not curriculum design specialists. We can't afford, I'd have to fire every person in the education department to hire 2 of those people. And then we wouldn't get any of our other work done. So it's been sent out to IDAC for that alternative delivery certification. And that doesn't speak to whether it's academic or technical. It only speaks to that it has valid design and delivery methodology for alternative delivery, non-classroom instruction.
So under agenda item number 6 and number 7, basically, are you looking for an approval to go ahead and move this forward to the commissioners for recommendations? Because, it doesn't really give specific locations here, or you're looking for more direction from us of what we want to do before it goes to the commissioners?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Because this is, the Education Standards Advisory Committee has made a recommendation to the full commission, okay? And that deals with primarily the real estate. Through our quadrennial rule review, we did the same review of all of the inspector-related education issues, okay? Their recommendation is subject to your input, validation, change, whatever. And so that really is, we wanted to just put that on the table and say...
And this is the first time we've had a chance to
That's
look
right.
at it now that it's come out of ESAC.
These are specific recommendations from ESAC that are going to go to the commission. But as they affect this particular license type, there are things, there was nobody from the technical training side, if you will, of licensure involved at the ESAC level. Mr. Reinhardt came and observed all of that, listened to all of the debate, and then we furthered that debate at the Education Committee meeting of this body. And so that really is open for really open discussion and direction from you guys. If you think there is, and I personally believe that there is, a qualitative difference between the kind of education that you expect here and the kind of education that is done on the state side.
Okay. And so one of the things that we can do here, and before we recommend that it go to the commission, is now that we actually have it in hand, do a line-by-line in-depth review, which we're not prepared for today, of course. But, and then just set it up for the next agenda, the next meeting. But I really don't want to see the recommendation of eliminating correspondence courses to go to the next commissioners meeting.
Up to you guys.
Yeah.
For inspector courses.
For inspector
Correct.
courses.
Because
yeah,
ESAC has already made the recommendation.
Yeah, we have nothing to do with the realtor side.
Right.
Okay. But for inspectors courses,
So do we have
really,
to make a recommendation?
yeah,
I
well,
mean, just
we have to give a report to the commission anyways, and that'll be part of the report that you've received this.
That we need
and-
further time
But
to-
we want more time
Yeah,
before
and this is going to be, remember, a proposal, so it wouldn't be adopted for another meeting or two. But if you want to offer a different proposal, you could.
There's things
for the
in here,
inspectors.
there's a couple of more definitions I know that are needed, okay? And then also there's some things in here I don't quite agree with that I'd like to, the full body to have a chance to take a look at it.
Brian, at this point, going forward, the commission, would it be appropriate for us to come back and say, we feel the need that correspondence should continue, there should be some changes to tighten it up,
Right.
and we will be forthcoming with those.
Right.
But for right now, our main thing is we just can't see wiping out correspondence. And the ultimate goal, I think, we would want to go to an alternative delivery system and do away with correspondence, but I think it would take us a few years to transition.
I've been at it now 20 years, and I've seen it go from apprenticeship only to really, really lose correspondence and 5,000 inspectors enter the field, and to tightening it back up and lowering the numbers again. But when I first saw it, I didn't quite understand why we had to have the change, and after I got involved with it more, I understand the need for it. You know, just due to the fact that we need good inspectors out there. We need to facilitate a way to get good inspectors out there. But if we agree to say no correspondence whatsoever, it's going to kill it. You really are. You know.
And that doesn't guarantee the quality will be there.
Yeah, it does. Well, you're going to have fewer people provide it for one, and then you're going to kind of regress back into the whole sponsorship, because people will take like a 90-hour course and try to find a sponsor versus a 400 or 380-hour course.
And you know, I want to umbrella this with, we're inheriting, because I've heard this discussion now for a few months about education. We're inheriting what society is sending you. And we have a situation in this state and in this nation where 2/3 of the kids in school do not read on level after 5th grade. These are NAEP figures. It's based on the Lexile that we're talking about for curriculum instruction. So unless things are written at a 5th grade level, after that you're going to have people who cannot read. This group can't do a thing about what we're getting, but this is across the board. It doesn't matter what your IQ is, if you're spatially gifted, or what it is. And so the alternative that I think a couple of you keep bringing up about some sort of visual and practical and hands-on and kinesthetic interaction as part of this.
And that was one of the rule changes that we made that required them to go into the field. Or
you know,
in the classroom.
Some people are professional test takers. You know, I can go in and in another language not know a thing and take a test and pass it. That's very, you know, it's just kind of what you were talking about. And know nothing. And know nothing. So unless it's really going to further, and I'm glad to get this explanation because now I kind of see the connection better. Unless it's really going to help the providers have more people get the depth of comprehension, because that's what we're looking for. I mean, the past numbers, and I hate to tell you this, they're better than the state's doing with our high schools. And so that's a crappy, you know, not a good word, but that's, you know, what can I say? That's not something that we need to be proud of. But really, the pass rates across the board are not, I know they're not the national average. But Texas has other issues that we're dealing with, and so I don't think... Yeah.
I understand.
Yeah.
See, I would like to see us get rid of the correspondence.
I think we can over time.
I think we need to. I don't necessarily think that a year and a half is too short of a time frame.
I do, because of the payback. I don't think education providers would be willing to do it because they're not going to make their money back.
I don't know if I agree with that. There's a lot of upfront costs in creating that.
Well, how many students do you have to make it back?
Yeah, if you have 500 applicants a year, you know...
Divided among how many schools?
Yeah, it's...
You don't have a big audience. That's the issue.
You don't.
No, absolutely.
I think, Lee, you could set up as a philosophy, we want to get rid of this in 5 years, 7 years, 10 years. I think that's realistic to give people the time to do it. I think if you're going to do it in 2 years, you're just going to shut it down because nobody's going to be able to afford it.
You're literally going to shut it down.
Mr. Chairman.
I think that's, but I think as a goal, you can get there.
I understand your point. I don't agree with it. But.
I understand.
I know that one of the issues that was raised earlier was the dramatic effect on costs. You know, if you took this 400-hour course, even if you did it in 6 books, you know, so you're adding an additional $5,000, you know, up front to the cost of getting the just for IDEC review of those 6 courses. One of the things that I wanted, I want to throw it out there just because I believe it is relevant. It's extremely relevant because any changes to the number of hours require legislative directive. Okay? And that really is a recommendation from this body to the legislature. The legislature endorses it. gives it back to you to administer, right? I did a review of other states, okay? And so, since we talked about the national passing rate and all of those kinds of things, and I was looking at a variety of things like bonding and E&O insurance and number of hours of education and all those kinds of things. There's still 17 states that don't license inspectors at all.
Correct.
Okay?
Those are good states.
There's one model, of course, in California that's a completely self-regulated, voluntary membership organization with
Which
very
is-
high standards.
Which is very weird for California.
Right.
But-
You would think, but they clearly have the support of the other license holder groups, stakeholders in this process, and so you don't get work from those stakeholders if you don't meet these criteria. So that's kind of that's a unique. It's unique in all the country. There's not any other states that have that.
Correct.
Voluntary membership, self-regulated program. But the one thing that I thought was extremely curious to me is that of the balance of the states that have education requirements, pre-licensed education requirements, and continuing education requirements. Forget about continuing for a minute. That's a different ballgame. This is pre-licensed. That qualifying education ranges from a low of 30 hours, okay, 30 hours, to, excluding Texas, a high of 120 hours, okay? We are at a minimum of 3 times the highest equivalent state out there. You want to talk about cost, that might be one other place to look at tightening the quality, but reducing the quantity to maintain a balance of cost. Just a thought that you might want to also put on the plate, if cost is a major driver.
So this state really does have the mandate for the most hours?
Absolutely.
Of
3
any
times
state?
the highest of
Okay.
anyone else.
How would the legislature take that if we went and said we want to cut the hours in half?
If you said, well, here's what we've done,
But
is we've tightened up the delivery. We have curriculum standards that we think actually.
Been there, done that.
Yeah.
We went from 300 down to 100 or 120, and then back up to
That's right.
400.
You're right.
You've done it.
Right.
What was the rationale to increase it again?
Low quality.
Low quality.
I mean, and then it
Low
typically is,
performance.
it's low quality because.
They're not getting the
and
relationship.
I
Well,
offer this as the
It doesn't
reason that
correlate necessarily.
The Education Standards Advisory Committee was created because when there is an increase in, you see the kinds of complaints that are coming in and they're about quality, the first reaction, and it's completely understandable, it's just normal, is we need more. You need more education. Well, it's not necessarily more, it's better. We also have the absolute highest of all of the states in the union for real estate education. And we stopped. We can put the brakes on and said, okay, no more. We're going to go back and look at the content of that education and make it better rather than just keep adding more. So it's a different approach.
So if we cut it in half, we're still the leader.
By a long shot. But,
Question, Derek.
well,
What half?
the things, a lot of things
That's not important.
went on in the
Yeah.
history. When we had the lower hours, we had people running inspector mills. You had one instructor, and I can tell you who it was. I won't, but I can.
Inspector
Who would-
Mills?
Yeah, who would teach 50 students at a time. And take 50 people on this, but you had to go do field work, and he'd take 50 people into a house.
Would he bus them there?
No, they had to meet
I
them
mean-
there. And so it came to a point of, how do you do this? Do you say, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that, no, you can't do that? You know, and it's anything that you do, someone is going to find a way to abuse it. And part of the reaction and why these rules are here is a reaction to abuses. And that's still what we're looking at. We're not really at this point even looking at setting a quality standard. We're reacting to abuses. And I think we ought to start looking at quality standards.
Kind of like that, the target seems to be both ESAC and here as the correspondence courses, because you and I see the potential. Do we have a lot of complaints of abuse with correspondence courses? Are we reacting something or just think it's happening?
I think we're reacting somewhat to the low pass rate.
But the low pass rate may not have anything to do with somebody whizzing through a correspondence.
The pass
course
rate's as high as it is because we change exams.
But I can tell you that in all the inspectors that I talked to on the local committees,
Yes, okay.
you know, in just informal conversations about correspondence, a lot of them do correspondence just because they do it at the last minute. They know they can get in and out and get it done.
Yep.
So my whole point, and as it ties into everything here, does correspondence improve the quality of the education? And I don't see that it does.
Does it hurt?
Does it deter it?
I think people end up using, not all, but I think there's a substantial number of people that use correspondence where there's no interaction at all as just a way to punch the clock, get the hours.
And no one else
throw
is
their-
doing that, just work through?
So now we'll have
Right,
technology.
and
where
there'll
they
always be
can-
people that will abuse it. There will always be people.
Now
like
we'll
you said,
have
there'll always be a
technology
way.
where they can turn on the webcam and walk away from it.
I'm not necessarily saying the webcam either.
I'm just.
Also, you can be very careful, because when you do talk about that, is you just conflated continuing education and qualified education.
Right.
Because the example you gave was continuing
I'm gonna have to
education,
look up that
which,
word.
absolutely, and I understand that.
Right, but we're talking about six.
It's next
and
on the
We're talking
agenda.
about 6 and 7.
No, we're really talking about 6 right now.
Yeah, well,
Well,
6 and
brought
7
in
is,
7.
yeah.
Brian, if the group agrees to it, committee agrees to it, I would say for right now, we need to continue correspondence. We need to look at tightening the rules and maybe increasing quality standards. But for right now, we just can't get rid of correspondence.
Okay. Brenda Roebuck, do you have anything on agenda item 6, 7, basically what we've been talking about?
I'll go with Fred that we need to continue to discuss and look at solutions.
We agree? God,
Yeah.
Brenda.
Wow.
Let me write this down.
Get that down, yeah.
Are we recording?
Yeah.
Where's our
Anything
webcam?
else?
No, well, if you're saying 7, on continuing education, I go back to the comments with what is broke is the beginning. It is the core. You're calling it qualifying. If there's a problem with inspectors not having the knowledge, and there are legitimate issues that we would have to address as far as teaching those that can't read very well. There is technology today, as we've progressed over 15 years, there is technology today that someone may not read, they may not write very well, but they can speak. They exactly know how to go through a
Good old dragon.
So we can go around that, but it is whether they're learning and whether the core education that we're presenting and that we're teaching and we've gone to field work, it's where is the problem? And that's what we have to figure out, is where is the problem? Because the trade associations, and it goes back to the continuing ed, I could tell you all that Tapria is going to teach doctors their continuing ed, but it's not going to make all of you doctors. You're going to have that basic knowledge before we can build upon it. And the classroom does build upon the education of the inspectors, not only in the material that's presented, but by the people that are in that classroom. And I know Fred at one of the meetings said that he learned as much in the hallways as what he did in a classroom. So there is a very vital part of what continuing education does, but it does not take the place of core education.
Thank you, Brenda. Donna Harbuck, thank.
Yeah,
Back. Sorry.
Since I've come to meetings and never spoken, I'm going to give it a try. Thank you. I was in the ESAC meeting and the question came up, why does anybody even want to do correspondence? And so I thought I'd give some answers to that. I talk to people every day from throughout the huge state of Texas. They live big cities, small towns. And just a couple of days ago, a guy called and said, can I take your course if I don't have a computer? He said he doesn't have a computer, he doesn't have access to the internet, and he has no experience using the computer. So first off, not everyone has a reliable computer or high-speed internet connection. And that's just the reality. And I've even noticed that in some of the meetings, the various meetings I've gone to, when people are supposed to use their computer to call in to go to meeting, it doesn't work. So the connection's not always there. So, I mean, if it doesn't work in Austin, how's it going to work out in some small town? And I think we have to have options for people at every financial level and family circumstance. And I've been doing this a long time, about 18 years, and it really makes me proud when someone calls and says that they completed a course, they're out there working, and they're making money for their family. And that's the core, that's the consumer. And I found this quote: even if you have a computer, that doesn't mean you know how to use it to its fullest. Here's a quote from a college student, and these kids grew up on technology. Okay, they're not these. We mostly talk to are older people. I'm talking 30 and up, because they grew up on technology like the college kids of today, who are trying to change professions or to make a little money on the side. And so this is a quote from a college student taking an online course at a college. They said, you need to be computer literate, you need to be computer savvy, not just computer literate. If you only know how to turn the thing on and type, you're going to have trouble. In every course I've taken this year, there's been at least one person who has struggled because they have minimal computer skills. There are probably more people out there, but they don't want to admit it. Third, being a home inspector is a profession. Professionals need their books, their DVDs, their other reference materials, and so they can find the answers. If they're out on inspection and they saw something they're not familiar with, then go back to their office and do it. And so online courses, usually, and look it up, they usually expire a year from when you ordered them, and you cannot view them after that. And providers cannot leave them open forever for everybody who signed up for the course. It's just too expensive. I've gotten calls from people in other states who say they've taken an online course. They have to take a state test. They have nothing to study. And they have nothing to study for a state test. How are they going to have to do their profession? So, you need to have these materials, the books, the DVDs, whatever, so that. And this was brought up. But an interesting thing in these meetings, the examples of people cheating are always on continuing ed. Courses on online. And one thing to remember there is the people who have given the examples, they say, I went and took this course to see how long it would take. So the people finishing those 10 to 20 hour continuing ed courses in 3 to 4 hours are professionals, and they should be able to answer most of those questions probably without even going through that course, because they've been doing it a long time. And a lot of the continuing ed is redundant for them. So they should be able to do that. And we offer a continuing education course through Texas State University. Well, I should say they offer it, and we're the provider. And nobody is finishing our course in a week or two. Everybody is taking 4 to 6 months. Some people, I get calls, I had an operation, can I get back into it? Sure, we don't have deadlines. I say just check, some of the rules have changed, but we don't have deadlines. And finally, if you look at the handout that we provided, over 90% of all the students who are becoming professional home inspectors in Texas use some hours of correspondence. If you were to shut it down today, like Fred said, you'd shut down education. Over 90%. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you. Stan?
I won't belabor the points that maybe some of you have had a chance to read in my email. I appreciate it. No, I really don't. But it sounds to me like this committee is really interested in doing a very conscientious effort to follow through with looking at some of these issues in more detail. Frankly, that's really what I wanted to see you do, and so I applaud you in that. You can read, if you didn't read it already, you can read it later. I won't belabor you to that now at this point. So thank you for your work.
Thank you, Stan. Derek McMillan?
Thanks. I would suggest maybe for the correspondence on continuing education, maybe nix that, but for the pre-licensure, keep it, because nobody can feasibly take off the 484 hours and just start going to class for however many weeks that is. That's a lot of time for somebody just to quit their job, go into another field. If it was all classroom, you're not going to have any inspectors. But for the continuing education, like you were saying, you can take 8 hours and 15 minutes. It doesn't do you any good.
I can't. It takes me at least 45.
It's because
you got to sign
taking the wrong one.
You got to sign up.
But like she says, you're kind of teaching to the choir. If you're a good professional inspector and you keep up on everything, all you're doing with continuing ed is validating that I'm still on track. I mean, unless you take
I don't
Affirming what you're
agree
doing.
with that, Steve.
Yeah. And
That's-
Yeah.
the qualifying now courses are to get you to minimum competency.
Right.
Continuing education is your growth through your career.
And we
They're
don't,
two different things.
we don't have any
And I am all for
statistics
getting
on
rid of
that.
correspondence in
we don't
continuing
test.
education. But not for qualifying, because we can't get people in.
and we have
That
no
only
idea
shows
how,
up
we don't
on
have
his
any
list.
idea how well continuing ed is working because we don't test.
Well, but you see the results in the field.
Yeah.
You see it on this list.
You see it on the list, you see it on the complaints, you
not.
see it on stuff
That's
your
not
clients
enough.
hand you.
How many inspections were performed?
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
I'm saying that part is a minuscule
Yeah.
part, but how often do you go out in the field and say, oh, this house was inspected last week, here's that report?
I understand.
Oh, my God.
Okay. Oh, Robot, you were next.
There's enough debate.
Okay, thank you.
Behind you.
Mike Cochran.
No big oratory. I've sit and watched this group around this table struggle with this problem before in years past.
And we'll continue.
And listening to what Doug said a minute ago with the complaints that are coming in and the grades that are coming out of the excuse me, proprietary schools, specifically on the qualifying, that's not what we're calling core, right?
Yes.
Yep. Okay. I'm struggling here, but I'm working with it. It occurs to me that your education subcommittee may want to spend some time with your trade associations and ask what we are seeing as people come out of these proprietary schools and hit the streets and are not able to hit the ground running. I can tell you it's like looking at a bunch of deer that you've just shown a headlight and into their eyes. They're freaked out. They are not prepared to hit the ground running. And my humble opinion is that they are not prepared to serve the public as they should be. Perhaps you should find out exactly how they're coming out of the schools. Spend some time with your trade associations. We'll tell you. We're struggling to help them with our CE classes. And that's one of the reasons why you got so much pushback when you started messing with the CE classes in the last few months. I would suggest that the Education Committee spend some time. It's not just correspondence. It's not just online. It's not just classroom. It's a combined issue of the way the schools are teaching and the products that they're coming out.
It's a definition of big.
Kind of why, sometimes I wonder if the correspondence course that everybody's targeting is not really the problem. It's a problem, it's part of the problem, but it's not eliminating that. I don't think we'd see a rocket scores and.
There's a combination of things that really need to happen to increase the quality.
Yeah, the underlying concern is there's not an awareness in career and continuing education, period, of this as a profession. And right now, Texas has poured a bucket load of money into career high schools, and yet every campus I'm on, I'll ask, are you kids aware, these are 17, 18-year-old kids that are looking for a career path. They may or may not do college. It's career and college readiness. And I asked them, are you aware of this profession? Not a clue. And yet they have advocates, and this might be an advocacy thing or an awareness thing, that are in there that are getting them ready to be a legal para, to be this, to be that. They're even doing certifications and pre-training in these schools and Judson High School in San Antonio. I mean, there's a bunch of them all across the state. And no one to date, even the teachers, seem to be aware of this. I mean, how do we get a bigger net? There's a bigger picture. Do we need public spots about it? Do we need something professional that kind of speaks to this as a way to go? Even the military complains about the quality of what they're getting in North Texas. So they recruit well, and then they gave input for college and career readiness and said, well, they can't work in a team. They have no understanding of how things work and blah, blah, blah. But, this is a bigger picture. So, Steve, I think you've zeroed in on it. I keep going back to, who are we getting in your classrooms? And yeah, so they can't read, but if they're sharp, they can catch on. And we can work with that.
But the other thing is most of our education is still built on traditional classroom, and it's not very effective. We're doing more hands-on, and hands-on seems to do a whole lot more good.
I mean, if we're
than the
not
classroom.
talking
we recently
to,
changed the rules to where it required.
It is
the
recent,
hands-on.
Yeah.
hands-on. So
Okay.
most of it's been traditional classroom.
how do we get an awareness out where 18-year-olds, as they're coming out, go, well, do I want to screw around 10 years, or do I want to start something? Do I want to keep living at home or do I want to start maybe something
Is
like
that back to having classes?
Parenting classes?
Yeah. We're teaching them cake decorating, but I'm
Parenting
thinking we need
inspectors.
to be talking about
Can that
this
fall under the Texas real estate? No.
across the street with,
Brian, that would cause you to lose your hair.
and $75,000 looks pretty good to these kids.
Just secondary.
Yeah. Did you have a comment?
Go ahead.
Can he
I
talk?
was going to comment on what you said about coming out of high school into this. I disagree with that because I think it takes a certain level of maturity to be an inspector and some experience, just life experience.
Wow, that would be immature. That is wishful
Exactly.
thinking.
That would be
But,
immature.
we got to start with something.
That is wishful thinking.
I trained somebody who was 22 and he made a great inspector.
There are a few out there, but for
And
the most
he's
part.
a past president of Terry. I mean, literally, I had somebody turn him away because he looked like a baby. He said, "You don't know anything," but he's a great inspector.
Yeah, that's even 40
You have a whole problem
So
in the trades. Nobody wants to go in
can
the
train
trades.
people,
which is-
But they're
to
not
be
doing
competent.
anything.
That's right.
So, just kind of come into a consensus on 6 and 7 is that right now the committee feels like we need to look at this closer before we make a recommendation. And we got a good feel after talking with everybody that, right now, I know it doesn't meet what you quite want, but putting a deadline of December of 2015 is not realistic. Keeping correspondence in core courses, but possibly looking at eliminating them for continuing education. And again, I think there's some definitions that need to be added, and then a couple of other things that I've seen in there. So I'd like to kind of, part of this is we don't have to take a vote or anything like that. We can just come
Sense of the committee.
Yeah, you get a census of the committee. And Steve, you're the chair. So what I'm going to suggest is you have a couple of meetings before our next Inspectors Advisory Committee meeting. So make sure that everybody
Yeah, y'all
who's on
do
the
that.
Education Committee, Fred and Barbara,
Did you want something, Brian?
would be able to make your meetings, and that, again, I know there's plenty of schools that want to participate in it as well, so if you talk to Stan and you talk to Roy, and I know we have a list of emails that we can set out that make sure that they're invited to these meetings. Whenever, I know standards, the last time we reviewed the standards, we made sure everybody knew when the meetings were, and then they can't complain that they didn't make
But they
it.
still did.
They still will.
They still did.
At least we have a
So
rebuttal.
what specifically are
We
orders?
want to look specifically at the
Your orders.
correspondence portion, to
Okay.
keep or not to keep, and I think.
Or to phase out.
Or to phase out. But you've got a consensus,
Okay.
but you need to,
Correspondence means online and all.
yeah.
No.
All online or
Correspondence,
conditional
get a
mail.
book,
Or
Get a
mail.
book, take a test, or proctor test, that's.
Don't
what
set
we're
us back an hour.
And then
Well,
also
you
some
just very
definitions
fast.
on some of the delivery. One of the things I recently ran into as a provider was that 24-hour classroom that we say that we need. Some of my certificates were getting kicked back because the person didn't believe classroom was interactive or didn't qualify for interactive. So I want to make sure we have a definition to be able to say, if there's an instructor in the room, I think it's interactive. Okay? And that, and one of the things I have is, while we're looking at it, is the time for approving courses. that, you know, the Texas Real Estate Commission, I know you're understaffed, but there should be some way that we can get these courses approved in a timely manner.
I thought y'all had gotten fully staffed. Are y'all understaffed again? Two?
They're down two. And I know the intent by writing this particular one on
That on the 30 days, you want to point to where that is?
it's on page 11 and it's B or H, sorry. Means no sooner than 30 days, meaning that I understand that. But don't call me before 30 days. I understand that, okay? But I actually have been getting feedback when I turn in a course. Well, I have 3 more days before I have to get that to you. And I'm calling, this was like 2 months ago when I called on like day 27 asking about it. This past week, I called on day 35. And it still wasn't approved, and she thinks she's going to get around to it this week, which she didn't, so I'm still sitting on it. I've had to cancel 2 classes because of a two-page application. And I remember when we created this application,
It was to streamline.
it was to streamline the process.
Right.
And so it's gone backwards. It hasn't streamlined the process. It's gone backwards.
One problem we're having as well is, because this is
Get water
new to
again.
the inspectors,
Yes.
you know, and to the education providers for the inspector
Here's some
side,
sweet
No problem.
in terms of getting those
I don't
courses
get
in
coffee.
and new applications as well.
coffee.
You know, we're finding that we're not getting the information that we need to determine whether a class is
But that's the whole purpose of streamlining the process was
right.
just
Right.
4
However,
lines of
when we-
outline of
when we
what
get
it's
the
going to be.
courses in, if we don't have a descriptor there saying this is an interactive course, we can-
Classroom.
You and I can, we can
Brian,
talk.
can
and-
y'all do personal stuff
Yeah,
later?
Yeah. Well, no, this isn't just that, but the rule is very self-serving, and I think we need to look at the words on the rule. You know.
Now, one thing I will say, these rules that were given, were gone through line by ESAC. They are going to be recommended by ESAC for proposal in August.
And we can
Now,
still.
what we can do is put a section in that keeps the correspondence portion for inspectors status quo, as it is specifically.
Mhm.
But I would suggest if you want to make some suggested changes to the language that it might not be something that Steve needs to study over several meetings if this is going to be proposed in August. Now, it won't be up for adoption
Right.
until November, but if you want to give some input.
It can be proposed, but they're
Yeah.
still open for changes.
Sure, but what I'm saying is if you want to give some proposed changes to specific line item language, sooner would be better than later so that we could maybe even have that available for the commission to decide in August, at their
Okay.
August meeting. Before it gets proposed out to the public.
Brenda Roebuck.
Linda Roebuck, to build on what Mike suggested, and I know that we have been trying to talk with inspectors, trying to, as associations, that's what we do. We have monthly meetings, we discuss issues that are going on in the business world as well as in their licensing, and I know Joe is here to say the same thing, that we would like to be able to talk with the education subcommittee meeting. We would be very active in trying to get you information that we're gaining out in the field that could possibly help. But what we get is we have the IEC, and yes, we have inspectors on the IEC. But how many times, other than these monthly or these every 3 months meetings, that you get to see us? And who you hear talk is people like myself or Mike, or that we're going to try to give you information that we're bringing to you because we truly want to make this an industry that is professional and that I believe in education. So I think that we are all on the same track of what we're wanting to achieve. It's just if you don't listen to us, it's one thing to talk. It's one thing to have open dialogue where I talk to you and you talk to me. But if you don't listen to what we're bringing to you, so no action is taken, or you don't come back and say, well, what did Terry do here, or what did Jakria do here, or what do you all think we should do? How should we do this? Then you're not using all of the options of coming up with solutions.
Thank you, Brenda.
In answering that, when I chaired education, it was completely open. Everybody had everything to say. I took it slow for the particular reason of getting input from everybody. Everybody's input was considered. And then we vote. And nobody gets everything they want. I don't get everything I want, even after being here for as long as I have. Everything that comes to a committee is always compromised. So if the suggestion is we should do what we're told, we're going to do what we think's right. That's why we got put up here. And we're all inspectors too, and we all see things too. We certainly listen. I listen to people at least every week and their ideas, and I consider them. And I'm very open in considering them, and most people up here are. So input's always welcome. It's what we're here for, is to listen. It is a working group, and it is considered, just to reassure you.
Thank you, Brent. So on this agenda item 6 and 7, we don't actually have to do a vote or anything. It's just a consensus to take to the commission to
leave the correspondence
portion.
Status quo.
Right.
For the time.
For the time
Right.
being.
And in your report, you can tell them you're going to study it or whatever your reasons are.
Right.
So
Okay.
does
We'll
it
take
have,
that as a directive. We'll take that as a directive
To change this
change
proposal.
that
Change the
proposed rule
proposal.
Right.
and leave that language.
Right.
That portion of it out.
Right.
Okay. And we kind of
8.
covered 6 and 7 together. Is there anything on 7 that anybody else may have had? Okay. Agenda 9, it's 12:05. We've been at it for 2 hours and 5 minutes, so we're going to take like a little 10-minute break. It's 12:23. We're going to reconvene the meeting.
You went past 10 minutes.
Huh?
You went past 10
No,
minutes.
I
We're
didn't.
done.
Plug me in.
We're going to discuss agenda item number 8. And did staff want to introduce that? Discussion possible action concerning changes to 535-213, 535-214, and 535-218 as a result of the agency's quadrennial rule
3
review
times fast.
process.
We need to put that word in the agenda more often.
Just for fun.
Just for fun.
Go around the table and everybody say it.
It'll be there in 4 more years.
Quadrennial. Quadrennial. Huh?
We bring you back by then, right?
Oh, God, no.
All right.
Shoot.
Did y'all want to deliver that?
Sure, I can take
Once upon a time.
Basically, as was mentioned at the last inspector committee meeting, because the education rules are aimed at consolidating or an attempt to consolidate the rules for the providers, the courses, and the instructors. The idea was to get all of that in one place. So there was information that was in the inspector rules that were currently in the current rules referenced back, as well as some stuff pulled out. So we pulled all of that and put it in.
So you don't have to go back and forth.
Right. And in 213, Carrie and I discussed this, since this is really something that not only instructors, but inspector license holders would be interested in as well, which is the list of courses of study for the instructor or the inspector courses. We put that back into 213, and then added some or moved some language around so that it would fit within the current rule structure. So we pulled that back. 214, all of the information in 214 has been moved.
Can we take them one at a time as opposed to moving into 214 and 218?
I knew you were doing it wrong, Tony.
Anyway, so going with the inspector committee's recommendation, we're going to leave correspondence in 213 as it is for C, which talks about the 50% of the classroom the field trips can't include or be part of correspondence on alternative delivery method. So we do have a couple of references here in order for this rule to fit in with the current rule structure. But after B, A, and B, you've got C, which talks to the 50%, D, which
and what you struck out on C, you're going to strike back in. Is that what I heard you say? Okay, I want to make sure I got clear.
And then we moved, and then we've got basically the listing that's in the current rules of all the approved core, what are we're going to recommending being called qualifying courses of study. And then, so that's that list. And then when you get down to the bottom here, there is the information about composite courses. So it's all in one rule.
Tidy.
Okay.
An attempt to make it tidy.
Good.
Tidy it up. Any questions about 213?
And the subcommittee already looked at these?
The subcommittee did look at these.
Did the subcommittee approve them?
Yes.
We did.
The only change was
We missed
actually
two.
taking up the strike through of the correspondence.
And
But
the
it cleaned it
composite
up.
course.
It cleaned it up to where it's easier to follow.
Okay.
Makes sense. Efficient.
So basically, with the exception of the strike-through and retaining the word correspondence, the subcommittee recommends approving these changes and to the full commission.
And it's not really a change, it's just moving it from one location and putting it in another location.
The format.
That is in fact the I would say I without looking at them say 100%, but almost 100%. The inspector rules that are in the current are they've been moved around and reorganized. Nothing has been changed.
Added or dropped.
Correct.
Not substantive.
Substantive.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Good word. Thank you.
I'm not an attorney. I apologize.
I like that word.
Just plays one at these meetings.
So,
thank you.
So,
Okay.
any questions?
214.
Okay, 214. 214, the recommendation, and there was some discussion about this at the subcommittee, and we did some further investigation and found out that this is in fact 214. All of the items in 214 have been moved to other sections of the rule. So in 535-60, the qualifying section, subchapter F.
So that's all the stuff at the front of your material sheet, though. the
Correct.
535.
Correct.
Okay.
And you'll notice when you look at that, it'll say for providers for inspector courses. There was some discussion at the subcommittee to have a rule that just simply referenced back to those items. However, after talking to the register, since a rule is supposed to have either administrative or other types of criteria, that's not recommended, and in fact they would advise against having just a rule that referenced back. If it was part of something else, it wouldn't necessarily be an issue, but just a rule that referenced back to certain other sections of the rule is not something that they would advise. So with that in mind, the idea was 214 would just simply be repealed with all of those sections, the knowledge that all those sections have been moved to other portions of the rules specifically dealing with the education providers, courses, and instructors.
Okay, my only question, Tony, is in my view of the world, if I want rules on inspectors, I really go to 535-200s. Okay? Is there going to be a list somewhere of inspector rules and tell us where in the 535s they all are? And then a course outline, or am I going to have to dig through all of the rules?
I think that the way to think about it is subchapter R is for inspector licensees. Subchapter F is for education providers, courses, and instructors.
Regardless of who
for
they
their
teach to.
pools. Because the instructors and providers, I mean, not the instructors, they get individually, but the providers can have real estate courses and real estate inspector courses under one provider license.
If you're going to be a provider, it
Well-
doesn't matter who
So,
you're
and this helps the providers because they have one place to
And that
look.
doesn't have anything to do with
They don't have to
inspectors.
go here for real estate and here for inspectors, and then we don't have to make sure that the rules are consistent. Remember the trouble we had going through?
Yeah, I do,
So
absolutely.
this is
and
all
I agree with
education
this.
stuff in one
But
place.
here's my question. We have qualifying candidates take an examination based on the knowledge of the Texas rules for inspectors, not all of the real estate licensing rules. So now part of the rules of the inspectors are going to be scattered out through other parts. How do they find them?
But do those,
No,
can I ask you
they
a question?
won't.
Do those license holders that are taking the exam, do they weigh in on the provider rules?
No, the only thing that
And
moved
the
are
inspector
provider
Because
rules.
that's the only thing that's being moved, are the
Right.
rules dealing with inspector courses.
Getting approval of-
Approval of courses, providers, and
Instructors.
instructors. And I guess I was confused because I would think that that wouldn't be something that a potential license holder would be tested on.
They wouldn't be tested on.
Or they wouldn't
The
even really
213.
care.
Well, I'm sitting there going, would they really care is what my question actually is.
It tells them what form to fill out, and stuff that
And their
inspectors would need
requirements
to
as the
know.
provider and what the requirements they would
Okay.
meet, that kind of thing.
All right, I'm okay.
So, okay.
All right.
So
Thank you.
the recommendation would be to repeal 214 because all of
I'm not
those
being difficult.
items
I'm
are
being
Split them up
thorough.
and put them in
been
there.
moved in a-
I'm not
so
doing this by
that's-
correspondence, okay?
So our idea of leaving a bookmark just
That's
went
not,
away.
yeah, that's not something that's doable.
And that would only help the person that had to memorize 214 and, oh, it's
Right.
gone.
Right.
They just go to providers in general for the commission.
Gosh, think of the
And if
hell
they're
we're
a
going to
provider,
provide.
that's going to help
providers.
them. It's
Yes.
going to be
Yeah.
more clear for all providers, too.
Okay, that was my only concern.
It made
Okay.
sense.
I'm good.
Any other questions? Move on to 218? No. And 218, similar to 213, just basically a reorganization of the rule to try to make it read easier. You'll see that the A is struck. This was the initial presentation from the last time we presented these rules to the committee. But in further talk, it confused matters to say this. So this is actually moved and
Got it.
reworded so that you're dealing specifically with the required. The rule deals with the continuing education required for renewal. Doesn't talk about what you have to do as a provider or any of the other stuff. So, same
It's kind of like
philosophy.
13 and 18 just made it more readable.
Right. I got it. I'm good with it. I went through
Clarity,
it.
clarity.
I'm good with it.
As long as we're okay.
Is that how that works?
Right.
I don't think it really does, but it sounds good.
Sounded good.
All right. Do you have any questions? Does the committee have any questions? You understand it? And then, is it Mike Cothran?
Thank you. I'm just trying to keep up, guys, okay? I'm old, what can I tell you? I'm seeing continuing education down here. Are we now moving away from ICE? Is that
No,
gone away, or?
No,
should this-
that's always been what, a term of art for inspector continuing education,
Right.
but I don't think that's ever been a
In
defined
the
term,
rules.
has it?
No. It's kind of a nickname.
It's like ACE, which is
It's a
appraiser
nickname.
continuing education. Yeah, it's just a way to shorthand continuing education for inspectors.
Okay.
But it's not a defined term, I don't believe. It just means, ICE just means inspector continuing ed, but it's still continuing ed whether it's ICE or not.
I'm just running to keep up, guys. Thank you.
Okay. And then again, we're happy with this. There were no recommendations. It's just a report that you're going to be giving to the commission.
You need
No,
to
No, we
approve.
would
We would
need
need
a
a
vote
recommendation.
You need
This
a
one?
motion on this
So I
one.
move to adopt.
Okay.
Second.
Second.
With the inclusion of
Yeah,
correspondence
with
course.
that. Good.
In 213.
Back into 213.
Struck back in. Yep.
Struck back in.
Struck out, struck back in.
They're so creative with words, aren't they?
Don't you love
It's
it?
so enjoyable, yeah.
Any further
We
discussion?
don't understand each other either,
I
so.
know.
Any further? All four?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Good. And discussion possible action regarding a way to clarify the multi-education pass available to inspector licensees.
That was something that I think.
Tony's
So we have
working on a
this.
graphic organizer.
Oh, it's a joint effort. But
Between?
Well, Mr. Reinhardt had asked for, in our conversations, with the way, because he's, very knowledgeable about this stuff, it's confusing to him. When we're explaining to it, I realize I get tripped over sometimes, so he's like, can we have
Actually,
some
this
sort
is
of-
very helpful.
It
some
is.
sort of
This is
graphic
great.
thing. And so Kristen and I worked, and she put all this stuff together with some input from me, and we presented it before the subcommittee. They had some additional recommendations, and then after the meeting, staff got back together and talked about it again and made some additional changes. So this draft basically is what it is. It's a draft before you guys. It's to, you know. have
We're
you-
very visual. Reading all that text, I've been trying to answer questions when people call, so what do I
For
really
years.
need to do?
You know what I tell people? Call Trek.
Well, I told the guy in El Paso
And then they
last
come
month,
back more confused.
he called Trek, and he was even more confused when he called me back the next day, because even from their side, they're dealing with not just inspectors, it's very confusing for them to explain, he's somewhere about 100 miles east of El Paso in the middle of nowhere. He's like, how do I get trained as an inspector?
Does that have to do with comprehension or
No.
just geography?
He was wanting to know how to combine some of these paths and how they work together, how do they
To
tie
make it
in.
work for them.
Well, and to do,
So
I
is
have
it-
to sit and look at it
Is this something
too,
that's going to be
so.
added into the rule as a visual?
No,
or
it would be
Something to help
it would be-
staff.
It would be a tool for we could even, if you wanted to, put it on the website.
Yeah,
I think
that'd be great.
though, one thing we need to add that I don't believe is added to this is that it's for informational purpose only.
Only.
You know, the rule is the rule.
rules
and
can
This is to
still
help
change.
people understand
Right.
it better.
Put your
I
little
think it's very good.
disclaimer in.
Because
It would
on the
just-
website, under the licensors tab, you have the paths, and then it kind of spells out several things, and if that could be not even maybe not a PDF, but an actual graph that's right below it. Yeah, it's broken out.
That's nice.
It's right here.
Look,
We do.
just like
It's
that
great.
on on the website.
So,
that
This
way-
is
that
nice.
would be
We're going to make it first instead of last.
No.
That's
Your
very
discussion, but I think
good.
the thought was to provide it to people who would utilize it,
No, this
not
is-
just
this
staff.
is
Great.
very helpful.
inspectors
Yeah,
as well.
yeah.
So this isn't a rule, you don't need a vote on this, do you?
We're not doing anything but taking text and putting it in a graph.
It's
It would
just a
be
tool.
You don't need to vote.
recommendation that it be posted on the website.
Yeah, with
fine.
with the added addition about it being.
It's fine. I think it's great.
Yeah, you don't need a vote on it.
Nice.
Okay.
Good job.
Have a comment?
Very nice.
Very nice.
Only an Aggie could have thought of this.
Yes,
I thought
just
you would agree.
wanted to ask that. By
Oh.
the way, I think it's a great idea.
I'm
Let's try to
surrounded.
simplify it like
Yeah.
it really is.
Surrounded.
I guess we would just ask, I think the one thing that we noticed on here.
Doesn't have anything about correspondence?
Is that it's different than the website, is that on this one, it's an asterisk, and on the website, it listed as the option 3, which it is in the rule. So that's the only suggestion that we have. It's listed as an asterisk under option 1 and 2, instead of being an
Under real
option.
estate inspector, yeah.
Right, well, for both professional as well as real estate inspector. And so it's actually a double asterisk on professional inspector, it's an asterisk under real estate inspector.
I
So
see.
it still is, technically, it's still one of the.
Well, the asterisk is because of the date, so if
Yeah,
we
the
take
Dates and
date
the
out,
hours.
Look at the
Dates and hours,
dates and hours.
Dave.
But on the website, it says, this is the option, and then it has an asterisk and says, and this is when it ends. So it's still listed as an option that way.
And it should be that way till the day.
We'll have to, I guess the
Well-
modification to this would be the reference to the expiration of correspondence.
There'll be one additional option.
Yes.
So under option 2, be option 2A, option 2B, and 2B goes away at December 31st, 2015, if you will.
Yeah.
Right.
Well,
But that's
it'll be
okay.
2B,
I don't really see why this is
not part of C.
Laid out good. Thank
One,
you.
two, three,
Thank you for your time.
Right.
Make it 3.
Yeah.
Somebody's off.
You're okay with this?
I mean, the reason that we included it as an asterisk is because, one, of space constraints in the chart itself, but two, because it's only available if you can't, if you can't obtain the approved experience coursework.
But they should know that.
That,
So you should put it up there, they should know that.
well, that's why it's an asterisk, that they can look down and they
Yeah.
can see that that option is available if they can't obtain it.
I think that
I think
lays
it's
it out
fine.
pretty clearly.
I think it's fine.
I don't know why the last chair didn't do this.
That's a good point.
Let's pick on
That
the
is a
last
really good
chair.
point. I don't know why the last members didn't bring it up to the chair.
Oh,
I think you have a consensus that this
did good
is
work.
this is
Very
helpful,
good.
That was
and to please add it to the website.
the most helpful
Thanks.
thing
Thank
Really
you
good.
for your time.
to come
Thank
out.
you.
I love
It
the
does help.
visual. Yeah, it's good.
It also reminds us how mind-numbingly complex all the options are,
Yeah.
that we might want to simplify.
Yeah.
A video.
Correspondence.
Stop.
Betamax.
8-track.
Oh, I was so about to go there.
Cassettes. So, any other discussion on line item 9?
No.
Okay. 10, discussion possible action concerning recommending all inspector-related rules be housed under subsection R. And this was put in here because things were kind of dotted around, but what we're doing already is resolving this line item.
You don't need to do anything on 10
So
now.
we don't need to do anything on 10 now. And so we'll go to 11, discussion possible action regarding SOP subcommittee review of existing rules. So I take the lead. Did you ask for this to be on the agenda?
Please, just so we can start the process.
Describe what you want.
Just that we can basically review all the rules, just to go over. It's starting the process. It's obviously not a 2-month process. It's
Gathering information.
Yeah, gathering information for possible or potential changes that are needed to the SOPs.
So you're requesting an official rule review of the SOPs.
Please.
So
I think the SOPs always ought to be open to review because the world changes. So
because the world changes.
The world changes.
By the second.
Very much so.
Is that something that requires?
Doesn't require
an action? I mean,
yeah,
just
but
awareness.
do you
He
have
just
a
wants it out there.
Do you have a consensus of the
Yeah.
full committee that it's time to start the process of reviewing the standards of practice again?
He's
Yes.
got it long enough on his tenure as
He's got
Is
4
it-
years.
Yeah, 4 years left.
Yeah.
Because the review takes about
Take a couple.
18 to 24 months.
Yeah, I figured it'd take a couple of years.
And,
Then
and it's
the
been about
proposals.
18 months since they've been adopted.
And then if you got proposals, it takes about 2 more years to get it through.
I'll be long.
You're getting
gone.
cynical.
And
You're
no,
getting
I have
cynical.
lots of
Incredibly back
experience.
by
You're getting
Oh,
cynical.
And as you know, nobody will be happy with what you do anyway, because you never listen to them, Brian.
Oh, he just won't let it go, really.
So,
He just-
Lee, you have a
We're Brian.
consensus to start officially start a rule review,
Thanks, sir.
to having your subcommittee meetings and inviting other people to industry members and associations to participate in it. And
You're
It's
soliciting.
not a quadrennial review, though.
good luck.
You're soliciting recommendations.
Go forth.
You have the committee's blessing. And
Make sure you have police
Just-
protection.
Absolutely.
don't try to finish it in the next 5 months. And
Oh, me and Brian both. I mean, we got one more meeting. We're out of here.
You had a timer
don't
going.
ask for
I
any
did.
more votes. So
Brian, we go to scheduling. Can I bring up something for a future meeting?
yes, you want agenda items. Scheduling future agenda items is next.
In meetings, yeah. Since it's not going to benefit you or me, and it's something should have been done for years, I would like for the group to consider committee members getting continuing education credits for coming to these meetings.
Well, that actually was proposed like 2 meetings ago and was shot down. So,
It was?
Yeah, I don't
remember that.
I don't remember that.
Yeah, it was your idea, but Greg had to bring it up because you missed the meeting or something. It got shot down.
I don't remember that.
Is it going to get shot down again?
I don't
So-
have
Really?
enough information to
I don't
operate
even
on
remember
this.
that coming out.
It was on an agenda like 2 agendas ago.
Was it?
I don't recall, but that doesn't mean it wasn't.
I don't normally miss that many meetings, just subcommittee
Just
meetings.
lately.
Lately.
So do you want me to put it on the
Yeah, I
agenda?
do. You get a good education up here, good earful anyway.
At least
And Greg,
that
and
subject-
watch, if it passes, Greg's going to go, what about me? I brought this up already.
Says a lot about Greg, I
I mean,
guess.
I learned a lot the last review with you of this.
Absolutely.
So you get like hour for hour, so every hour you're sitting here, you get continuing education.
Yeah.
for it.
Well, while the meetings, he'll sit here
Who's
forever.
going to cut their certificates?
Better be nice to her. Just saying.
He's thinking about that down there.
Well, Brian, it ain't gonna affect me, so.
I'm happy to use my phone as an alternative.
Get an affidavit of participation.
No, there is actually a proposal, and it started in the appraiser arena where the feds actually allow some limited hours of credit for attendance at specific meetings with a certain intensity in the agenda, if you will. And so there's actually a proposal for something similar to be a part of the real estate arena that involves also increasing some hours. But in any case, if you would like to make a recommendation like that, then I would encourage you to think very seriously about the limiting the number of hours, and then also limiting the number of meetings, also for which you would get and then a document, obviously a documentation issue.
I think the subcommittee meetings are the most viable because that's where the work gets done.
But if you, like you said, if you do it, put a cap on it.
Yeah,
right.
It's fine.
No different than a ride-alongs.
Yep.
Any other agenda items that you perceive?
Future meetings.
But other than the
That would
future
be part of
meeting?
the rule. That would be part of the rule.
Is there anything that may have come out of this meeting that you know you want on as an agenda for the next meeting? General public as well? Is there anything that you think should be on the next meeting's agenda? No?
I moved the
Okay.
next meeting, March 1, 2015.
Mr. Wilcox, you serve until replaced.
Until replaced.
You know, and that happened to me at the end of my second
That's the
6
first year
years.
bubble.
I didn't get replaced until November.
I'm just letting you
He's
know.
been holding on to that little tidbit.
I've already had this happen
Oh,
to
you
me.
just keep it up, friend. Keep
I've
it
already had this happen to
I'm
me.
sure
I know
we'll
that's
start
hard.
poking and prodding at the commissioners fairly early for their interview process.
Oh, I got threats, man. Let me go.
When's the next commissioners meeting?
November 17th.
November 17th? And we need to meet 30 days prior to that?
Don't make it the last 2 weeks of October, or I won't be here. I'll tell you that right now.
Where you go?
My anniversary.
28th sounds good.
Yeah, I'm traveling that.
Oh, that's not 30 days
2
before.
weeks. I'm going
Oh,
to
for him, yeah.
To where?
China,
Are you really? Which
About
part?
Monday the 13th.
Beijing, Shanghai, and Nanking.
October,
The 11th.
no. The week
I've not been to
before.
Nanking.
My
So
wife's
the
speaking, I'm
6th
carrying the bags.
is a
You'll have a
Monday,
great time.
or
It's my third trip.
10th marriage.
So
I've
what are you
been-
looking at the first half?
Yeah,
When are you
merit
looking?
badge. I got some Boy Scout
Merit
stuff
badge.
going on that
I
weekend.
thought you said
too.
marriage. I was like, yeah, you
I
might want
heard
to hold that
marriage.
date off.
We all heard that.
Marriage.
How does your wife feel about you getting married?
Oh, marriage counseling.
Well, that
Okay.
Sorry, honey, I can't go. I got a meeting.
That won't be on the minutes.
Why not?
It's being filmed.
Blackmail.
So I think Brad requested last time that it be a Friday and not a Monday. And
So therefore, we'll have it on Monday.
so October the 10th, does that work in everybody's schedule? What's wrong with the 10th?
It's fine.
Okay.
I'm bucking for March, man.
October the 10th, Stephen?
It's open on my calendar yet.
Michael?
Time?
Why don't we go ahead and stick with 10 o'clock just in case there's a subcommittee ahead of time. They can still do their 8:30 subcommittee, since Lee is interested in being abused.
And you got to work with Steve on your timing, because I'm on both of y'all. Not that I show up.
I'm going to say.
So we'll do it 10 o'clock on October the 10th. That'll give us enough time.
If Ms. Heidelberg is on the subcommittee, we may want to consider moving that a little bit later to allow for her to attend.
Later?
Well, she's an hour ahead of us. She's in El Paso, so it's
Behind An hour us. She's an hour behind us.
So she would be
if there's-
7:30.
Yeah, so
Right.
if there's any chance of her calling into it, I think 7:30.
Okay, is there any chance of her calling into it?
I'm just saying, I think 7:30 makes it difficult to do a 7:30 meeting.
For her.
For
So
her.
that-
Yes, sir.
That would put
Six,
9:30
but that's
for
just
us. That would give her 8:30 then.
Or
You
if we
think
did-
that's more reasonable?
I think so. I would think so. Would give her time.
9:30 for you.
Noon for the full
So
committee?
11.
Maybe
11
11
o'clock.
for the full
How
committee.
about 11 o'clock for the full committee? And that'll give you time. Trust me, you'll need it. All right. No other agenda items, so we've set the next date, so we can adjourn. It's 12:51.